Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's talk Trump.
Politics is theater, and all the world merely a stage, and politicians just little political puppets strutting and fretting upon the boards, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Not quite the exact quote from the Shakespeare, but my general thoughts on politics begin there. Actually, I need to pull you back a little bit further. But before I do, let's say hello, good morning, good evening, and good night. I am your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, and this is the almost, not quite, not making promises we can't keep here, folks, the almost daily Zencast, your friendly, Zen-oriented radio talk show podcast about the nexus of political conspiracy, socioeconomic policy, spiritual practice, and plain old-fashioned opinion. That's right, folks. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm not here to tell you that I can give you enlightenment. I'm not here to tell you whether you're right or you're wrong. I'm just here to share my humble thoughts and opinions about what might be going on in the world, as opposed to what everyone else is dead certain is going on in the world. Because if there's anything life has taught me, those two things are never quite the same. What people think is going on and what actually happened, huge gap. Big, gaping gap of watch the gap kind of danger. Mind the gap, sir. And or madam. It is Friday, October 25th of 2019. It's day 1000 and... I want to say like 9? Let's double check, because I'm a big lazy bum, and I totally meant to do a special episode on day 1001, but I was burnt out and tired and exhausted from my... there you are. I was exhausted from my hobbyist, creative art enthusiast activities of the weekend. For those of you who do not know, I am actively involved in various art projects of the mind your own business, we do what we want kind of thing. You know, of artists that just want to make art and not worry about people understanding what they're doing. But that's content for another episode. Today is day 1008 of the first epoch of Trumptopian history. And as of this date, according to the independent, nonpartisan, non-for-profit website, trumptracker.github.io, if you type in Trump Tracker, it should come out. As of today, day 1008, 84 of the 174 political campaign promises made by Donald J. Trump, formerly known as Drumpf, for those of you who don't recall, that's his actual family name, Drumph, because, you know, foreigners, immigrants, gotta change their name to be more American. I digress. 84 of the 174 promises have not even been started. A whopping 18 of them have been in progress for the last year. 21 of the 174. And you got to give it to them. This is where they get their endless amount of like, look at all he's achieved. 21 of his 174 promises are supposedly achieved. Although I see a few of them that maybe need updating. For example, number 7 is labeled as check mark and green. Number 7, in the first 100 days, Donald Trump promised to refuse the $400,000 annual presidential salary or only take $1. Now, that's labeled as true, but there's a caveat. There's there's links to, I guess, sources that confirm and or, establish the thing. Yeah, sources. But there's countervailing reports that, A, he never donated the donations that he promised to. For example, and I don't remember if this is from before or after he became president, but he made a huge stink about making massive donations right after 9/11, and it turns out that he did not. Just like he swore up and down that he was at 9/11 physically helping at Ground Zero, he totally wasn't. I digress. I bet a few of these can be re-examined, is my point. Now, 43 out of the 174 have been flat out broken, and 8 of the 174 tracker promises tracked have been compromised on, which I'm sure if it had been a black man doing it, that compromise would not be approvable by the base that currently supports Trump. But since Trump is doing it, I don't think the base even gives a shit, right? They just want him to say the dog whistles and wink the wink and flash the secret hand sign of I'm a white supremacist that's part of the Illuminati, wink wink, nudge nudge, but I'll pretend that I'm fighting it because that's all they give a shit about. But I digress. Welcome, friends, officially, I think finally, after much hemming and hawing and faux light shifts that indicate like it's gonna be the end of the act, but then it wasn't totally. We are now at the top of Act 3. Cue the lights and sound. Impeachment time. Now, mind you, before you get all your underpants twisted in a bunch, I don't care if they're panties or boy shorts or what, boxer briefs or tidy whities, before you get your male and or female undergarments all bunched up in your bunghole, I need you to understand where I stand on impeachment, or else none of our conversation is going to make sense. And this is something that my internet trolls that love to fan troll me flagrantly disregard. Like, they completely disregard my core position. Okay? And that's this, friends. Number 1, let us be clear. If Donald J. Trump was actually, really, and very seriously a threat to whatever the secret cabal calls itself, whatever they really are, whoever they really are, because I doubt it's all the people's faces you can find on the internet, because if you can find it on the internet, it was put there. And if it was put on the internet, odds are it was put there with mildly nefarious purposes to confuse and distract. Because the internet is just another media outlet company, right? A conglomerate of companies. And most of them, although there's a lot of entrepreneurship on the internet, most of the content is owned and operated by the same kind of shady, corporate, greedy, unreliable sorts of nefarious entities as CNN or Fox News. So it tickles me pink when people like pull shit off the internet to go, see, it proves the news is wrong. And I'm like, but it's all the same. I digress. It's important for anybody following along or trying to wrap their brains around my thesis to understand this. Politics is a game. It's theater. Its purpose is not to defend our rights. Its purpose is not to protect us from those in control of the system, which is mildly oppressive, to say the least. Its purpose is to engage us in theatrical entertainment that exorcises our fear of not being in control. Change my mind. Go ahead. Prove to me, to a president, that really 100% verifies that I'm wrong. I'll wait. But I've sat around and looked really clear-eyed and nonpartisan at presidential history, and while yes, there have been bold attempts to reform, and yes, there have been crazy, corrupt attempts to corrupt, there's one through line that I find very clear. And that's that whoever they appear to be, whoever they present themselves to be, whoever they might have actually been as human beings and individuals before achieving political power by entering office, at some point, they get maliciously corrupted consciously or unconsciously. And here's where we can get lost in the chaos and noise. Most everyone's trying to point fingers and blame a discrete group. For example, the deep state, right? The treasonous FBI agents, right? The so-and-so and hooky mucks over there or over there. This person and that person. But I humbly suggest to you, my friends, that concern, that itch, that need, that drive to point fingers is part of the problem and not part of the solution. The system of oppression wants us, you, me, everybody, preoccupied with the self-righteousness of my politician is better than your politician. Now, the system of oppression wants this not because of some well-thought-out political agenda predicated on killing us all or enslaving us all or whatever. Insert your favorite conspiracy theory here. This is all anchored at a deeper, more internal level, right? So I'll get to my bottom line. If you are politically engaged and you are busy arguing about political ideology, defending your politicians' ideological stances, etc., putting down the ideologies and support of other politicians and those bases, if you're busy with that kind of mental activity, which is, as you can imagine, these days, a shitstorm, a clusterfuck, chaos, mindfuck of daily what the fuck moments and distraction and noise and echo chambers. By the way, man, I try to monitor the news, but I do not let it tell me what to think. And I get accused of being a victim of the Mockingbird program. But I'm sitting here calling it out, right? Like, the echo chambers are on fire right now, folks. Especially with this whole double whammy of Bill Barr announcing that his investigation into the Russia probe investigation is now gone criminal, while simultaneously the legal association known as the Bar, right, not to be confused with William Barr's last name, is seeking to, quote, legally bar William Barr or force him to recuse himself. Checks and balances, huh? But let's not get lost in the chaos. what's really going on? Is this about Putin? Maybe a little bit, sure. I can't believe that there's still an argument that the Trump base doesn't understand. It's like everyone on the planet forgot about the Panama Papers leaks, okay? No matter which side you think you're on, if you're dismissive of the fact that Russia has literally, that Moscow has verifiably been pumping money, dark money, illegal money, money that no one knows where it comes from, into the political spheres of most countries around the world, so much so that if you just take a survey of your top 2,000 political agents on the planet, an obscene number of them, turns out, had offshore accounts connected to Russian offshore accounts with James Bond villain names. That's the part that gets me. They literally used James Bond movie villain names to identify, to use as like their account names. But there's a network there, right? And it's all been leaked and it's all been looked at. Now, is that another spoon-fed crazy thing that's totally made up just to confuse the shit? Possibly. But the fact that it disappeared, the fact that it broke news, that it caused scandal, and that it was quickly sort of petered out and forgotten, right? And even though people bring it up, like the news is like not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole anymore after breaking it. That's where the corruption, I've said before on the podcast, no human activity, institution, organization, endeavor is 100% anything. No human group of more than 30 people can be 100% on point, 100% righteous, 100% true, 100% accurate, 100% genuine, 100% honest, 100% on the left or the right, 100% anything. No human group can be 100% anything because human beings themselves are not absolutist in their nature. Now, we tend to be absolutist in our programmed thinking. My politician is absolutely honest and clear of corruption and genuine and believable and absolutely fighting for me. But that other motherfucker over there is a Satanist and a baby eater and a Kabbalist and is owned by insert whoever evil person owns them. The real problems, my friends, I humbly suggest to you over and over again in my podcast, is that the real problem is that the real problems are not any of the problems we are focused on. If Donald J. Trump was a real, actual, physical, political, ideological threat to the cabal, to the Illuminati, to the insert your favorite conspiracy theory name here, to the person I think is more accurately identifiable as responsible for the dark side of things in our world, ego, or mammon. I don't want to use Satan because then we get on this whole Satanist thing. Because I'm coming from the perspective of Satan and God are not external dynamics, but rather internal dynamics inherent to all of life. Right? The moment you shift from an external perspective of the devil's out there somewhere to, the idea we call the devil is a function of my being, then we can get some real work done. Because that's where the problem actually is. I'm going to try to keep this short because I tend to ramble for way too long and then I get recursive in my thinking, so it starts to loop back on itself and it gets very fractal, and sometimes I get new layers of detail, but really I just start to sound like I'm going in circles. Here's my point for this morning, folks. As the impeachment debacle begins, remind yourself, if he was a real threat, the Illuminati would do something more malicious than a, pardon the pun, kind of trumped up investigation that is shuffle-footed and stumbly and can't quite seem to get enough momentum to go anywhere, right? This impeachment is the height of political theater. Now, that doesn't mean I think the Democrats are doing something wrong or that they're idiots or that they're part of the cabal. It doesn't mean that I think the Republicans are right and that they're going to win and he's going to get re-election, or vice versa. Both parties are riddled with ego corruption. All politicians get hijacked by ego, the spiritual phenomena, the energetic being that is an aspect or a facet or an inherent and organic part of us, right? But let's zoom out. What does that mean in practical terms? Well, that means in practical terms, I think, that we can, if we come to understand the distinction I'm making, we can, as a society, shift our focus. We can keep arguing about whether or not Trump is a great president. I mean, that's a funny argument, right? That's an entertaining argument. Trumtopian base supporters of dear old Drumpf man will bend over backwards to prove their loyalty and allegiance to that individual man. If that isn't proof of my theory, I don't know what is, because ego is all about loyalty to a person, regardless of their action, their intention, their willingness to relate to you, etc., right? That's ego loyalty. But if we shift our focus as a species, as a community, as a group of citizens, and we disengage from the game he's playing, and this is how you know he's playing a game. Let me share with you some patterns that I and others out there observing this man since he was a supposed, New York real estate mogul and playboy, literally. He was, for a while, the kind of poster child of this is what playboy means, of what it means to be a man. You're rich, you're powerful, and you're surrounded by women. But I'm not there to attack him on the fact that the hardcore, conservative, family values Christian right supports a pornographer / adulterer / what's that other word for people who fuck a lot? There's a really great fornicator, right? Like, I mean, the hypocrisy there is just 3 layers of like, you really, really bending over backwards to make this work inside your head, aren't you? But let me digress. Here's the game, in my humble opinion, and in the words of others too, in the opinion of others who've been observing him. Here's what he does. He does not engage in the same game we've been brought up to pretend we are playing, right? He approaches politics as like game show debate tactics. Like, you can say whatever you want. It's like here's what he does. He screams out loaded questions that have sort of obvious implied conclusions embedded in them. They cast suspicion and imply or raise the sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Isn't it obvious there's some wrongdoing going on in the person that, the person I'm accusing? But it's vague, broad brush, lacking specificity, as many like to point out, lacking evidence, and most importantly, very much a sort of like, I'm made of rubber, blah, 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 it's going to stick to you. Like, a hypocritical projection. He tends to accuse people of precisely something he's openly done. One of my favorite moments, and I keep coming back to this, and I think it will, I haven't finished making the meme because I just keep sort of picking it up and then getting distracted by things and not taking the time to finish it. But when Donald J. Drumpf, and who else is curious what the J means? Like, what does it stand for again? I forget. Is it Jonathan? Is his name Donald Jonathan? When when the Drumpf man stood on a political theater stage and replied to the third grade preschool like fucking playground taunt of being something with the "I'm made of rubber, it's gonna stick to you," like, it's not me, it's you. You're the thing. I'm not the thing, you're the thing. And I think truly the most revelatory moment was when they just started throwing that line back at each other. I'm not a puppet, you're a puppet. I'm like, you guys are both puppets. You may or may not be doing what Putin wants you to do, explicitly and on purpose, but you're definitely puppets for the same energetic spiritual phenomena that Putin is a puppet for. And that's where we're at, folks. That's what's important. This impeachment, and I hate to say this because this will upset and offend my Democratic friends, is as frivolous and stupid, even though he's doing way horrible things. The way it's being executed is as likely to not get anywhere, and that's why I mean it's frivolous and stupid, as Bill Clinton's impeachment. And I know that stings, because Democrats who love Democrats are probably still a little annoyed at Bill Clinton's impeachment, but proud of the fact that it went nowhere and he was able to not only finish his term, but get reelected. And I think that Trump fans are assuming the same. Oh, but here's the thing, though. Like, the pattern is so consistent. The pattern I'm pointing out in Trump, the sort of like vagueness in his questioning that implies an accusation, lack of details, specificities can be overturned, right? But he also mixes in blatant lies and fact-checkable real facts. That's important, folks. And I've been saying this from the beginning. He mixes nuggets of truth in with things he knows are bullshit, but stares you in the face and pretends to believe he really believed. And here's the thing. The follow-through is to never follow through unless following through means repeating yourself. In other words, he never achieves closure. What does he want? Did he win the birther thing? Not really. He was wrong, right? But he patted himself on the back really hard about it at the end. Do you remember? He said something to the effect of, I achieved something no one else was able to achieve, or I did something no one else could do, in saying that by making Obama produce a birth certificate, he somehow was vindicated, Trump was, and his righteousness was proven. But the birth certificate proved his entire conspiracy theory wrong, which, by the way, he still dangles and uses and relies on his base believing in. And this is not new. He didn't start doing this when he became a politician, right? In fact, the birther conspiracy was from long before he announced running. He also has done it a bunch of times in different ways. When he first kicked off his campaign, he claimed to take semi-political action and quote-unquote save Carrier air conditioning by keeping them from closing down a factory. The truth of it was, the factory he saved was never really going to be closed, and the factory they were just sort of doing a review about whether or not it should be, but no one had made a decision, I think was the case. And they were coming around to announcing it, and they were staging announcements at that factory. So, blah, 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 he pretends to negotiate, quote unquote, and then he walks away saying, I saved all those jobs, and then says zero. As the same firm very quietly shuts down a factory the next town over and ships all those jobs to Mexico. Right? When he talks about the deep state, of course there's something that could be called the deep state. There are short-term politicians, medium-term politicians, and long-term politicians. And then on top or underneath that, there's the bureaucracy, right? But he vaguely accuses people of being deep state, and you'll notice he only accuses people, political actors, of being deep state if they contradict him, if they stand in his way, if they challenge him. If they suck ass and blow sweet kisses and do nothing, then he doesn't call them out as deep state, even though they might be exactly the same in terms of the kind of operative, the kind of job, the kind of bureaucratic position that they occupy. See, it's irrational. He constantly repeats this process. He will use the mixture of made-up things with things that are sort of true, with things that are really true, and this vagary approach of only time will tell, we'll see, and then reminders of crazy things that don't make sense to distract you and move on with the news cycle. Now, is this 60 chess? Is this an intellectual superiority to the news media and the other politicians? Maybe, but somehow I doubt it. You know what it does sound like a lot to me? You know what it really rings a bell of? Sociopathic, ego-driven, intellectual manipulation. Dishonest, charlatan, shenanigan, bullshittery. You know what I mean? It sounds like a non-politician politicizing politics to get one over on all the politicians. Now, is there a problem? Of course. Is government corrupt? Absolutely. Is there a malicious group of individuals somewhere deep down in the system that wants to keep us distracted, hungry for violence, ready to shoot each other without thinking or asking questions or trying to solve problems first? Abso-fucking-lutely. Is Trump fighting those people? I really motherfucking doubt it, friends. Now, he pays a lot of lip service. He does a thing here or there to kind of keep the plausibility of his efforts believable. But let's take a quick look at what he's done in the last month. Oh, I don't know. Betrayed a reliable U.S. ally. And now, does that automatically make me a warmonger? Of course not. I want wars to end. But I don't want to cause more wars by taking actions that betray loyalties and set up our enemies to get what they want. You can't end the endless wars by setting up more conflict. You can't end the endless wars by behaving dishonorably. You can't end the endless wars by hiring our soldiers out to more endless war, which is essentially what he's done. And blah, 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 he's bringing them home. Yeah, not according to the men deployed and not according to the vets close to those in service. And it's a deep irony to me and kind of a sad, in-your-face sort of oh, you're so full of shit and you can't even see it. But, Trump and his base constantly brainwash themselves into thinking they care about the troops while they cut medical services, while they cut social services, while they cut homelessness services, while they abuse the military-industrial complex and do the bidding of, right? Those who support the troops and yet support Trump, they clearly, in my opinion, don't see how the military-industrial complex is larger than any one politician. or any one political party or any given ideological construct. And that the profit motive behind that is what's at the core of said corruption that is corrupting all political activity. I'm going to put a pin in that because I've rambled on long enough today. Let me close with this, something I've been, it's the theme of my thinking, and I've been trying to spit it out this entire podcast today, and that's this. We can stay busy arguing politics. We can stay distracted defending and fighting over which politician is most righteous. We can keep arguing, criticizing, shit-talking, and praising or, clinging to and defending the political infrastructure as it exists. Or, and this is a big, huge deviation, friends, this is important because it's not being talked about anywhere. None of the Mockingbird media outlets are talking about it. None of the resistance fighters are talking about it. And obviously, none of the pro-Trump support base is talking about it. But our choice is this. Keep engaging in that list of things I just rattled off, which is basically keep engaging in politics. Stay on the treadmill. Keep bashing our face into the merry-go-round meat grinder of life and death vis-a-vis political corruption. Or, my friends, we can take a deep breath and set down all that anger, all that negativity, all that judgment, all that hatred, all that us versus them-ism, all that political ire, all that frustration and ego. And we can focus on healing ourselves. Why? Because if we heal ourselves in the way that Yeshua and Magdalene taught us, in the way that the Buddha taught us, in the way that Krishna taught us, in the way that everybody who was anybody supposedly spiritual, divine, connected to divinity, truly speaking from spiritual source, they all taught healing through loving transformative forgiveness and spiritual exercise. If we committed to that and spent our energies there instead of politics, invested our money there instead of in politics, we would heal ourselves, we would heal each other, and, my friends, whether they like it or not, we would heal the politicians. And whoever the evil, sociopathic, ideological warmongers are that control the political theater puppetry machine. Because see, those people, that's the last thing they want you to even think about. Those people, whoever the bad guys are, it doesn't matter, right? Because they aren't bad guys. They are ego-hijacked brothers and sisters in our humanity that need healing. Whoever they are, they want us not to heal. Therefore, they would rather risk not surviving more violent revolution. And I'll give you a really wicked hint, folks. 5,000 years of bloody violent history. And this is the clusterfuck political bullshit mess we're in today? Yeah, revolution must really fucking work. Killing people who killed people to prove to them that killing those other people before was wrong really did it right. Because here we are. Look at the mess we're in now. Look at the fine mess we've gotten ourselves into, humanity. To adapt an old Abbott and Costello line. Is it Abbott and Costello or Laurel and Hardy? I think it was Laurel and Hardy. Look at the fine mess you've gotten me into now. Something like that. That's where we are, folks. And the treadmill, the merry-go-round, the meat grinder, the political ideological system of mind fuckery, it wants you armed, dangerous, paranoid, fear-based, angry, outraged, and ready to shoot first and think later. And if you're not at the brink of that bloody revolution yet, They sure as fuck want you busy thinking in terms of fighting instead of healing. Just listen to the language that politicians use. Tell me I'm wrong. When was the last time? Maybe Marianne Williamson, right? This breakout year for a spiritual voice on the political democratic debate platforms. But is she going to make it? I don't know. Stay tuned. Only time will tell. Right? Speaking of which, I really, really owe you guys a Democratic debate review, debunk, critique episode. It's just that I find debate so tedious. It's like, yeah, I get it. Each of you is a good guy, and you're fighting each of the other as good guys to be the good guy that beats the bad guy. If there was ever a dumb fuck stupider system, I don't know what it is, right? Like, that's just stupid. Politics is corrupt, so elect me into office. Excuse me? No. So, I leave you with that, my friends. If you want to make a difference, if you want to see change, start with your own spiritual healing. And yeah, I know, that's hard work. It sucks. It's tedious. It's not as much fun as yelling at your TV or watching sports ball. But it's what we're being called to.
And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay woke.